So your breakout this year is talking about being a non-anxious leader, which isn't that funny? Yeah, like everybody listening is just laughing, right? But there's a lot of pressure on leaders. Doesn't matter in what area of life, just a leader. There's a lot of pressures that come with it, and the higher the role, the higher the pressures. What kind of pressures do you see church leaders face? What are some of the things that are on their shoulders that people might not understand?
Well, everything is on their shoulders. Now, some of it is on their shoulders because they're putting it on their shoulders instead of on Jesus and remembering he's actually the one that carries it. But I think especially in this post-COVID world that we're in, when things are going wrong culturally or things are going wrong in the church or things are uncomfortable, the leaders are looked at. Well, it must be your fault that our attendance is down. It must be your fault that this isn't working. And that's not accurate most of the time. And then you've got leaders who are scrambling, trying to figure out, because the budgets aren't working, because numbers are down. It's just conflicting. We have more people online than we should. They should be coming. And so it's just all of the things, and wrapped up in all of that is the understanding, hopefully, that that's a really sacred job as well. And so there is a mantle of responsibility and a mantle of Christ-like leadership that comes on there. So if you're not in the good spot, that can just overwhelm you to the point where what we're seeing, 1,700 pastors a month drop out of ministry.
I'm sorry, what? Can you say that again?
1,700 pastors a month are leaving ministry because of depression and fatigue and anxiety and all of that. So, I mean, this is a really, especially in the ministry world, it's a really big deal. It's a really felt need.
Can you help the layperson understand? If you've never been in ministry, you don't understand what it's like to be in ministry. Not to their fault, but you just don't understand some of those pressures. Can you talk to that layperson to kind of describe some of the things that their pastor or their other leaders might be feeling that they might not understand?
Sure. I think when you are a layperson, if you're working in a 9-to-5 job, it is 9 to 5. So let's say I'm a Starbucks barista, which is my dream, to someday do, or just drink all the coffee.
Wear the green apron.
Yeah,
you're wearing green today.
I am wearing green.
So you're on your way.
But I think you go, okay, I'm going to go make coffee, and then I clock out and I'm done. You are not laying in bed that night going, gosh, I hope that person I gave that coffee to is okay. They looked really sad, or I hope that coffee order was, I hope that I didn't give, dairy to the, and you might have those momentary thoughts, but it doesn't go home with you. And ministry is not a job, it's a calling, and it really is a life commitment. And I literally think if you know Jesus, you're called to ministry. So it doesn't matter that there's a special
ministry is a lifestyle, not an occupation.
Yes,
right?
Exactly. Mm-hmm. But with that comes we say, Jesus, break my heart for what breaks yours. And we want to have the heart and the mind of Christ. But what comes with that is the heaviness too, and the grieving. And so, for people in ministry, they don't go home and turn off the phone and just go, I'll make more coffee tomorrow. They are, I know Sally is getting her cancer diagnosis tomorrow. I wonder how she's doing. And I know so-and-so's son is walking away from Jesus, and he was drunk and and so there's all of those things that come into play. And it's very easy, especially many ministry leaders, myself included, can get very narcissistic to where it is all about us and what we can do and what we can fix. And so it's easy then to just get wrapped up in that. Even if you're healthy, it's still hard because people are mean, and people that are supposed to be like Jesus are not like Jesus. And that happens a lot in the church. And so they wear the weight of that. Like, this Christian harmed this Christian and that person's hurt. And
we're talking about inside the church, not necessarily outside.
Just inside the church.
Right.
So I think, you're a layperson. I think I equate it in some ways to maybe being like a school principal or even a school teacher. You go to school and you do your job, but man, you go home, you have to lesson plan. And unless you have zero heart or emotions, you are thinking about Betsy. Because Betsy came to school and she was wearing the same clothes for 3 days in a row. And she was hungry, and you gave her a granola bar you had in your purse. And so there's that kind of responsibility that you feel, and that kind of deep compassion that you feel that can really just overwhelm sometimes.
Yeah, and obviously why it would lead a leader to anxiety, right? To have anxious thoughts, especially when they're trying to deal with it on their own shoulders, and maybe not fully leaning on the Lord.
Yes.
But I would also be remiss to to not mention the fact that we are raising the next generation
Yes.
of leaders, right? So how can we as parents, as foster parents, aunts, uncles, children's ministry leaders, how can we help in raising the next generation to deal with anxiety a little better, to deal with those anxious moments, to be in the midst of the chaos and not cave to it? How can we do that?
You asked the question perfectly, because so often we want to hear, how do we help them not feel anxiety, or how do we help them not be anxious? That's impossible.
happen.
And it's the wrong question. So you asked the right question. It first comes back to modeling it. And here's what we think sometimes. We think, well, I should model that I never worry, I'm never anxious, everything's fine. So when I shut my bedroom door, then I can
freak out,
lose it.
Yeah.
Then I can absolutely lose it. But the reality, and if you look at 2 Corinthians 4, where it talks about how we're fragile clay jars, and which we all are, none of us probably like to admit that, but we are. And what it actually says is, this proves that the great power that we have comes from God, not from ourselves. So literally, as we model, this is scary, or this is hard, or I'm concerned, we are showing them that we aren't perfect. And we're showing them that whatever we do as we pull out of that, or as we wrestle with it, comes from God at work in us, not from us. That's beautiful. We need the next generation to love Jesus a whole lot more than they love us. Like we need the next generation to want to be like Jesus, not like us. So modeling that. And my big thing is, let's not hide it. It's hard. I speak at camps to kids all summer long. This will be my 13th summer's coming up. So I've done, 60 of them. First thing I usually start with is, life is hard. And all the kids go, amen.
Yeah.
Like they're like 90-year-old grandpas sitting in their rocking chair. She's right. But the reality is, it is hard. And we would prefer it not to be, but it is. And I think the church has, for too long, put blinders over our eyes because we just don't like what we're seeing or what we're dealing with. So let's pretend it's not there. Well, what we have is a generation who doesn't know how to deal, who doesn't know how to go to Jesus with stuff. And so I'm like, life's hard. God's really good. Following Jesus is really hard. Best decision I've ever made, hardest thing I've ever done. Let's talk about that. Let's live in the tension. Let's live in the tension of so good, so hard, so awesome, so scary, and kind of sit there. And I think as we raise this next generation and we allow them to sit in the tension and we live there and show them how we deal with it, they begin to walk closer with Jesus, and they begin to go, okay, I can go to God with that. So as you think about that, not just how do they not have anxiety, they're going to have it. How do you deal with it? And honestly, man, if you have an anxiety disorder and you're on medication, your kids need to see you take your medication. They need to see that you need to get help. They need to see that you're okay not being okay, but you're okay getting help. We've tried in our home to normalize getting help when we need it with our foster. We just want them to know we need help. I'm not okay. I'm going to get some help. I'm going to call my therapist, or I'm going to do this because I need some help right now, because we need to raise him up, right, to know it's okay to get help and to recognize some of those warning signs.